Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your time. Today we will go through VMware Cloud Foundation fundamentals in about 15 minutes. And if you have any questions, definitely I would like to take it offline. So we will just talk about a little bit more VMware Cloud Foundation that you must have heard in the morning during the general session. Understand what are the various hardware components and software components that it is built upon. And then if you have any questions that I would like to answer within 15 minutes, that will be great. So I think, a lot of customers have talked about virtualizing their data center in last 14 years. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to make sure that we change the definition of a data center to make sure that the platform that we are trying to bring it out to the data center is changing the overall definition of bringing the cloud infrastructure on-prem. Which basically comprises of your virtual center server, vSphere at the core. On top of that, I have a software-defined network, as well as I have software-defined storage to start with. So what happens basically, the Cloud Foundation will allow me to procure hardware in a prescriptive way that we have built an architecture on that, deploy it as a part of my initial procurement and various phases in the procurement. It allows me to deploy my entire cloud, on-prem cloud, in few hours. At the same time, to going forward, how do I manage my cloud when we talk about day two operations, right? And also how about the support? So it's based on various design concepts of prescriptive approach from a high availability at the rack level, making sure that the racks are redundant, have distributed management design to support my overall infrastructure to run my cloud. Prescriptive approach for my hardware. That's a area where a lot of people that we have seen making mistakes because they have all the manual interventions. They do all the steps manually. That's where they basically tend to fat finger and get into some issues. So we want to make sure that we have a prescriptive approach from the hardware perspective. When you're talking about a rack, what kind of homogeneous hardware that you can have. And at the same time, some customers are asking about, is it scalable? Can I scale it? Can I have more flexibility of the environment? Can I have my own APIs that I can write to and have some level of integration with your third-party products or services that you want to utilize it? So we have given a way to programmatically control or add more integrations on top of it using REST APIs. So let us look at hardware components that it is based off of. From the physical hardware perspective, redundancy is built right from the power across the rack, across the servers. Servers are virtual VMware vSAN ready nodes, HCI approach. Plus we have management switch in the environment as well as two top of the rack switches. And if you are going beyond one rack, we have spine switches to provide multi-rack interconnects actually. So what the rack looks like, right? I mean, single rack is made up of some servers, starting with 4 servers to build my management stack. And on top of that, you can expand your rack up to 32 hosts. On the top of the rack, you have fixed switch configurations or infrastructure. One of them is management switch and 2 top of the rack switches, which allows me to have a prescriptive way of building my overall infrastructure right from ground up. And how do I do that if I'm going to go scale to multi-rack, right? So you have top of the rack switches across each and every rack with the management switch, and then that's how interface with the spine switches, and then a virtual desktop like I've shown in the first rack, various workload domains. Workload domains are basically my vSphere clusters that I define as a part of my initial bring-up process. And I can scale out across various racks seamlessly. So overall expansion due to the spine racks, I can go up to 8 racks, which gives me about 256 hosts in a given virtual VMware Cloud Foundation instance. If I need to, I can grow beyond 8 racks, but for that you need to make sure that you have spine switches with that capacity to go beyond 8 racks. This is typical physical networking architecture that a lot of customers have asked questions about. How we do it? Number one, if you look at it, we are very, very prescriptive. From port number 1 to 32 will be utilized to interconnect my host to the TORs. Number 2 is talking about port number 48 for my management switch. Number 3 is talking about port number 39 to 42 for my interconnects between the two TORs to make sure that my TORs are highly redundant and available in case anything goes wrong with my TOR. One of the TOR, second TOR is there to take care of my, redundancy. Number 4 is basically talking about uplink connectivity. There are 4 uplinks going to the corporate network or data center network. Each link that we have supported so far is up to 10 gig. So right now I have 40 gig right away, right there to our data center. But if you have 25 gig, then you have about 100 gig pipe going to your data center. So from the throughput perspective, going to the data center, we are taking care of from 40 gig to 100 gig, depending on what your infrastructure that you want to build into your environment. And number 5, which is very, very critical, if you want to grow beyond 2 racks, we are very prescriptive to make sure that the port number 50 or 49 are used to expand beyond your 1 rack on the spine switches. So that's about physical networking. Touching upon logical networking, traditionally you are exposed to various networks that we have been deploying so far for vMotion, vSAN, various VXLANs, as well as external connectivity, right? So we deploy all these networks as a part of my auto deploy of my particular stack. When I'm bringing up management workload domain, I'm deploying all these particular networks seamlessly, right? Initially, definitely, when I'm going through the process, we'll ask you certain questions as exactly what are your VLAN numbers that you wanted to give it to management VLAN, right? You want to specify some level of IP details, right? Specify your DNS, specify your Active Directory. All those details are specified, and then it will move forward and carve out all those networks for you as a part of my initial deploy of VMware Cloud Foundation. So we talked about the physical components, physical architecture, physical networking. Let us talk about various software components. So the GUI that we use for VMware Cloud Foundation is SDDC Manager. If you look at this screen very, very closely, the screenshot talks about physical resources available for a given instance of my VMware Cloud Foundation. I have 1 rack, and if you click on a view details, it will show you all the details of how many hosts I have, what each and every host has a type of, and all other details. If I click down on the physical rack domains, right now I'm running 1. So when I'm deploying my VMware Cloud Foundation environment, it automatically builds management workload domain, which is number 1. And then you can go and create either a VI workload domain, which is my VI cluster, or you can create VDI workload domain with standard best practices reference architecture for VDI is deployed. So in this, it gives you the overall understanding and overall pool of CPU, memory, and storage across the rack available and consumed as a dashboard. Also in the dashboard, if you look at it, you have various options called lifecycle management as well as user management, and some settings which will allow you to provide some level of network settings. If you want to create a VLAN on top of the rack switches, you can click on a settings button, and then it will open up some other more resources and options where you can go and create a VLAN onto your top of the rack switches. So what is my management workload domain looks like, right? So when I'm deploying my VMware Cloud Foundation environment, it is deploying management workload domain or management cluster that you have been familiar with. It has all the required components along with VMware Cloud Foundation. It is going to go deploy Virtual Center Server, is going to go deploy PSC, 1 and 2 is going to go deploy NSX Manager, is going to go deploy NSX Controller without any manual interventions on top of minimum 3 to 4 ESXi hosts that we talk about. Even the virtual vSAN data store is configured automatically with policy-based configurations based on reference architecture. What is it? Can you, so minimum is 3 nodes that you need to have. Design reference of vSAN, design reference of virtual center server configurations, PSC. So each product from VMware has their own set of best practices. So we bring them together. So from your perspective, you don't have to worry about whether the architecture is right or wrong. It is just simply based off of VMware best practices. It is deployed for you, right? That's where the key is, basically to see how quickly we can deploy, and you can start consuming it very quickly. So there are a couple of slides that are talking about what's new in the vSphere VMware Cloud Foundation 2.2, which was released like about 2 weeks ago. So in the past, we have customers coming up to us and say, hey, we don't want to spend another 3 or 4 hosts per rack, because that's what the architecture was, to create a management cluster per rack. So we kind of took that away. Now in 2.2, you can have only one management cluster supporting all other 7 racks just for the compute. Deployment types, you can start with a consolidated design approach, which means that with the minimum 4 nodes, and you can grow to medium and large to make sure that you can go into that particular rack kind of architecture seamlessly. Because when you talk about the rack kind of comes with minimum 8 nodes. In a way, that is expensive, but you can start with 4 node and eventually graduate into that architecture. So this is what it is talking about, how you can graduate into the multi-rack. And also, if you have 4 node to start with, you can create a resource pool and deploy workload domains or workload VMs into that particular domain, and then make sure that you can move those workloads once you have another additional workload domain that you create. So it gives you a path to start with 4 nodes and then migrate into the actual reference architecture that we have, like multi-workload domains that you can create. So this is what we are talking about. You have VI workload domain, you have VDI workload domain, and you have management workload domain, which allows you to host workloads of your compute, then eventually graduate them into VI workload domain. So SDDC Manager has a couple of other VMs. They are non-transparent to you, but they are basically the main engine of VMware Cloud Foundation, which allows you to control the entire life cycle of the stack that is being deployed, as well as upgrade and patching of the entire management stack, which will allow you to make sure that you can download the patch or upgrade, and then it will take care of performing an upgrade as per your schedule, as per your time, in a specific window per workload domain. You do not have to upgrade everything or patch everything. You can go in a phased manner. And with that said, I think this is a BOM or bill of material that we have. What is being deployed in an automated way and what is being patched and upgraded in an automated way with this engine. That brings me my 15 minutes, but if you have any questions, I can take it offline.